Welcome to Running It Back, the Lessons Learned from Sports podcast. I'm Mike Palmer, joined as always by Tarlin Ray. Some activity in the NBA, apparently, Tarlin, in the last couple weeks that, last time we met, I believe the Suns were up 2-0. We talked about CP3, aka the point guard, aka Cliff Paul. Chris Paul.
Good State Farm. We're friends of the show.
Yeah. Anytime you want. Yeah, we're open.
Sponsor.
Hit us up. Things took a bit of a turn. The stories have changed, the narratives, the people who ascended in prominence and now maybe are making us think of tiebacks to historical figures, corollaries, if you will. We went from talking about Chris Paul to now we're kind of all living in Giannis's world. Giannis Antetokounmpo? How is that? How is that? Antetokounmpo? We'll clean this all up in post.
Don't clean it up.
I'll just type it in and my overdub will say it. It's all going to be beautiful in post. But Giannis, the so-called Greek freak, was freaking amazed at how well he did. Any thoughts from you? What are your opening thoughts here?
So I felt like you're changing up our format a little bit. So, and I don't want you to clean this up in post. So we did have 20 minutes of early banter. And I loved going to record because we actually I wasn't sure what we were going to cover right now, which is you're keeping me on my toes.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're interested in our early banter, it's part of our platinum package. Check us out on runningitback.fm. That's runningitback.fm, the Lessons Learned from Sports podcast. You heard it here first.
2, we always start the show. You're the lead. You're the one that's driving us, but you always ask me how I'm doing.
I typically do. Yeah. But then I don't know where it's going to go.
30 plus shows. And I know the colonoscopy threw you off last time.
It did.
But don't be afraid. I want to tell you how I'm doing.
Yeah.
So let's at least have some appetizers before we get into the meal. Of course.
Yeah.
So I'm doing fantastic. I've missed you, Palmer.
Yeah.
We missed our every 2 week because I had an opportunity to go on vacation with the family, go to Yosemite National Park.
Nice.
The press and the reporting was that it's going to be like Disneyland, as packed as Disneyland. It actually was a great experience. No cell coverage, almost impossible to get access to Wi-Fi. And it's just a moment to spend, and no TV in the room. So to spend some quality time with the family.
Yeah.
Now, family time, there are those moments where you might be yelling at each other and you want to see how in a non-air conditioned lodge you can just get away from each other, but still great moments. So that's one.
Yeah.
2, I slept this week.
Yeah.
And for every 4th or 5th pod, I want to talk about sleep because sleep's super important. I know as older gentlemen, and I will not age myself, but I'm still south of 50.
Yeah.
There are things that are becoming super important. Drinking water, a ton of it actually makes you feel better. And sleep. So I had averaged 7 hours and 41 minutes of sleep the last 7 days.
Wow. Is that a personal record?
It literally is a personal, I'm telling you, a personal record over the last 6 to 9 months because I really had some trouble sleeping. So I'm coming in rejuvenated.
Yeah.
And so a shout out to the Oura Ring. I know we've talked about State Farm, but
come at us
because it is truly something that's helping me monitor how I should be sleeping. My ring will tell me what time I should probably go to bed.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to lead in with that.
Yeah.
Now we can do whatever, we can go in any direction you want to go now.
It's performance technology is what it is. These feedback mechanisms, they help you get better. It's the whole quantified self movement. It is a real thing. And it's Oura Ring, you were saying?
Oura.
All right. Oura Ring. And then other providers, know what, right? Ain't no ring on our finger sponsor wise. So if you're an upstart in the space, talk to us as well. But so we have to talk NBA. And I feel like, point taken around open with how you doing. Got it. But then following up on that, are you dodging how pot committed you were to the point guard on our last show?
No,
like you
were
going pretty strong. We got into it a
Yep.
little bit. I wound up on #Team Barkley And I'm going to stand by it. Also, we will be talking about Space Jam in a subsequent show. Charles Barkley, solid performance in Space Jam. But Chris Paul, we don't want to beat up on him too much. But you in particular were very supportive of the point guard in our previous episode. The worm has turned. Giannis, like the Phoenix, like Paul Pierce from the bowels of the Forum. Was it the Forum? It probably wasn't the Forum. It was probably the Staples Center.
Close enough. Hurts nonetheless.
The Staples Center, out of his wheelchair, Giannis, after his seemingly debilitating, seemingly season ending. I don't know what's going to happen. Is he going to come back? If he comes back, he'll probably be hobbled. He scored 40 something points, but the rest of his team didn't show up in game 2. And then something happened. You know, the Olympics, another show we'll be talking about the Olympics shortly. A torch was passed in the NBA to a younger, Greeker, freakier athlete. Giannis has ascended to the throne. Comments, thoughts, Giannis, Chris Paul. I want to spend some time talking about Giannis corollaries, but first let's digest what just happened in the NBA. The Milwaukee Bucks win a somewhat entertaining, competitive series, but after losing the first 2 in Phoenix, they roll through the next 4 to win the series in 6. So if you bet Bucks in 6, you're happy. I didn't get the sense that you were leaning towards that eventuality, Tarlin. So how are you assimilating what just happened for us in the NBA?
Okay, so a few things. Yes, I am not jumping off the CP3 bandwagon.
Yeah.
Everyone is saying that this is another data point to show that CP3 is a choker. Now,
choker is strong.
Hold, I'm getting a lot.
Please, it's your time. This is your time. I see it.
Am I speaking?
Is this thing on?
So I'm getting a lot of chatter about that.
Yeah.
Now, there were moments in that series where you were just befuddled. How, when it was almost like there was a sniper at times on Chris Paul, because there were a few times he lost his dribble with no one around, and just lost his handle to the other team. So
I was flummoxed.
And there it is. And you normally count 9 to 10 minutes in where a word that I need to go look up that my daughter is studying for a standardized test.
Flummoxed. I was nonplussed, Tarlin. I gotta say.
And are you pronouncing that the right way? We'll look that.
We'll talk. We'll get our intern Zaya Avant-Garde. Our intern. We'll look into that. Zaya.
Zaya, come on, get her name right. So that was a little disheartening to see. The other thing, I said I felt like the Bucks are making Chris Paul look short because the number of times he had balls deflected, he had 4+ turnover games. He just was not in a rhythm.
And Drew Holiday had something to do with that, right? So,
and I was going to go to Drew Holiday. I'm a lifelong Bruin fan. Loved Drew Holiday when he played for the UCLA Bruins. Former Campbell Hall graduate from out here in LA.
And to be clear, you rep as a point guard. If you were to be listed with a position, it would be point guard, not shooting guard. Correct? Is that correct? You're a 1?
I'm a 1.
You're like a 1-2 though. You're a little bit of a 1-2.
Listen, I'm a 1. Well, I have to see the players on the team. If they need me to score, then I will. But I like to get the ball.
So the way Chris played the game is close to the way you would. Calling him the point guard as someone who played point guard. It's a heavy praise, and you're saying something for real.
I really appreciate the way he controls the game, gets guys into the right spots, and gets the ball into people's hands where he knows they can do something with it. So I was going to say Drew Holiday's on ball. So you have the all NBA teams, and sometimes you don't know the players, and they've always hyped Drew Holiday. Not only the press, but players. Hyped Drew Holiday as one of the toughest guys, toughest defenders.
Mhm.
And I've never seen, I mean, he is a pain. He is
And he's big too. I mean, to your
big,
point, yeah.
bodying,
Strong, fast.
moving his feet, anticipation,
Mhm.
great hands. I mean, the strip that he had at the end of, I
Oh
can't
yeah.
remember, it was game
Game
5,
5.
Booker,
Hmm.
when Booker went in no man's land, stripped the ball from him deep in
Yeah.
the paint, and then made the
Oh my
alley-oop
God.
play
To
to
Giannis.
Giannis
Yeah.
is crazy. So Chris Paul, yes. I don't know if they climb the ladder again. I do think they have a great team. I think Chris should stay there.
Yeah.
They got hurt because they had, DeAndre Ayton got exposed. Chris, he was getting a lot of, I mean, if you look at the Lakers series in round 1,
Yeah.
I don't think he had a shot outside of 2 feet because
Mhm.
of the flow of their offense. So they have some things to work on. Devin Booker, who I'm glad we didn't run the show. We wanted to say is next Kobe, unbelievable ball player, but has a little bit, as PJ Tucker said in the championship parade, he needs to just get a little bit more dog in him because when he got hit, my buddy said you should look at Devin Booker's shooting percentage pre getting his nose busted up in post.
Yeah.
But to Chris Paul, listen, we have a point guard show.
Yeah.
I was hyping Chris Paul, and part of it because of his leadership.
Sure.
And we talked about leaders and his ability to go from team to team
Yeah.
and actually take a moribund team and actually make them better.
Yeah.
So I was blinded by that. Not by, I still am going to go down as he's probably one of my favorite point guards of all time. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I probably overlooked, and this is talk more about Giannis, is Giannis's leadership.
Right. Well, and also
And
Giannis, I think that's absolutely a fair point. I will just to put a little bow on it. I will continue to say that Chris Paul will be classified in the range of another Sun legend, Charles Barkley. I think that argument probably still holds tight. We'll see what happens in the rest of Chris's career, but I'll stand by being on Team Barkley and his legacy. And also another big fella close to my heart, Team Ewing, Patrick Ewing, where I would say, he's still in that space. Ewing never won a title. When you never win a title, that does put you at a different echelon. And at least now Chris Paul has played for a title and he made it to the finals. And I also think, in addition to the defense from the Bucks, not just Holiday, offense wins games, Tarlin. Defense wins championships. So I do think there was a little bit of that coming out of this series. And then also nod to Jalen Rose. I believe Father Time is still undefeated, and Chris Paul is getting older. The wear and tear of the regular season that he, as head of the NBA Players Association, signed on to, I think towards the end of a long playoff run by that point, he was feeling the pounding, and the more physical, stronger defensive team wound up winning the championship this year. But a lot of that was also Giannis's leadership. To me, it goes back to Giannis in game 2 when they lost in Phoenix. He played like a champion and he led by playing like a champion and with maximum effort, despite the fact that he is the most athletically gifted person on the court. He was also putting out the maximum effort, again, as a young player. But that to me reminded me a little bit of Jordan as the best athletic player on the court, also putting in the most intense effort. And then we've never seen that with a player his size. I was just really struck by Giannis's leadership through the way he played the game.
I think that's an amazing point. One, leadership comes in many, many different facets. When you look at what Giannis was doing early in his career, most people would say he was quiet, kept himself. We do need to have that Bryson DeChambeau roid picture where he was 190 plus pounds and now he's 240. He's a monster now. But I actually sent a chat to some folks at work and was saying the thing that struck me with Giannis, you see Giannis in an all-star game, you're like, wow, he is the Greek freak. I'm not checking out Milwaukee Bucks games on
Yeah.
NBA TV And so I probably gave him not as much credit because he lacks a jumper. If you don't have a sweet jumper,
Yeah.
I tend to give people less sway.
Yeah.
Cameron Payne's of the world, it's so hard to look at.
It's a fundamental.
You got to get the fundies down.
Yeah.
But the thing that struck me with Giannis is he's relentless.
Mm-hmm.
And those who have played, and there's a turnover on one side of the court,
Yeah.
and you sort of put your head down and pretend like you're running back. I've never seen, he is full sprint to try to get back on defense. And there were, he had 5 blocks in the last game. The last time you saw that kind of effort was probably LeBron in like the 2016, 17, where he had some chase down blocks. But Giannis, how do you not follow a guy who truly just leaves it all out on the court?
Yeah.
And so I think first and foremost is his hustle. He is NBA Defensive Player of the Year, right? He is the MVP, and there's a reason for it. And I think that, that sort of bleeds. That's part of creating the culture that you want for a winning franchise.
Yeah, exactly. And his supporting cast, quote unquote, felt more staked in as equals. At least him and Chris Middleton, who'd played together for 8 years now. That's a counterpoint to a lot of the dream teams where, taking your talents to South Beach or to Golden State or to New Jersey or to the Los Angeles Lakers. That's a cheaper way to get to dominance, as opposed to the idea that these guys grew up together and then they brought in the outside pieces, and they did get a lot of people looking askance, looking awry at their acquisition of Drew Holiday, basically saying they paid too much to get him there. But then he did really pay off. Thoughts on the importance of defense? I mentioned it before. It's a sports cliche that I've been using for probably about 30 years now, which is offense wins games, defense win championships. I was always a better defensive player, and I focused on that side of the game in terms of basketball. But what about Brook Lopez as maybe your 4th best player on the Bucks, 5th best player on the Bucks, but he's a really good defensive player. PJ Tucker, another pickup, a tenacious defender. There is character in addition to the culture you're talking about. There is this positive culture supporting each other, but just sort of maximum effort culture paired with a strong defensive team. Then the problem becomes, how do we score enough points to win? But that's almost a counterpoint to the style of play we saw from the Suns. They were good defensively, but they were more about being a transcendent offensive team. Any lessons to be learned, or is this just one case where maybe the more defensive team won, but there were other factors? Any thoughts on the importance of defense versus offense?
I think, and don't have the stats. Normally I would be
really, you were busy getting good. You were getting good sleep.
Really tight on my Wikipedia stats, but you have to look and see the championship teams are normally free flowing in the regular season. You often have a lot of offense. They cannot be in the lower end of the defensive rating as a team.
Yeah.
But when you get in the playoffs, it is cohesiveness on the defensive side that's going to get in games.
Playoffs.
Brook Lopez was at one point a starting center, and that's was brought to the Lakers and was shipped off. He didn't know what to do with that stretch center. PJ Tucker has always been an undersized and great defensive player. No one would say Bobby Portis when he was on the Bulls.
Right.
That was his dominant role, and
yeah.
he has found a 6-man role that even when Giannis is out, and yes, I picked up Bobby Portis weekly, streaming him on my fantasy basketball team from time to time.
Yeah.
And then you look at a Pat Connaughton, who is Giannis's workout buddy, who will get down and play defense as well. I mean, they had a 7-man rotation, and with Drew Holiday picking people up at 3/4 court, and Chris Middleton, who probably doesn't get the credit he deserves, but is an all-star.
Yeah. And another good defensive.
Great defensive player. So, and they're all long. So I do believe, I think you're right. Defense wins games, but I just want to go back to Giannis. You were talking about the super teams.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking about Giannis and the Bucks and comparing it to, we often try to compare it to organizations, and in business, there is no quick fix to culture.
Mhm.
There is no quick fix to creating alignment amongst your team members or your employees. And what the Bucks have done in a hard way and stayed true was have a vision, have a mission. They built up and found a transcendent player, lucky in a way to get this 15th pick in the first round.
Mhm.
And he's turned into who he's turned into the last 4 years, two
Yeah.
MVPs.
Mhm.
But along with that, they have A, being willing to stand pat, and B, have someone in Giannis who says, no, I'm going to do it the hard way, because he saw that every day they were making those incremental gains. And even though they washed out last year in the bubble against the Heat when they should have won, and they had a lot going on with the Jacob Blake shooting and
Kenosha. Yeah.
Kenosha shooting, they still fundamentally believed that they were about to take the next step.
Mhm.
And it's hard. Think about it. It's hard to do that. Budenholzer and other organizations have been fired that you
Yeah.
can't get Giannis next. Giannis would have looked to jump because he's looking at everyone else in the league
Mhm.
that's jumping to the super team. But he is betting on a 7-year relationship with Chris Middleton, who he knows will help be the closer at the end of the games to get a shot. Where you look at when he's getting shots at the end of the game,
Mhm.
he doesn't have a lot of space.
Nope.
Chris Middleton's not blowing by you.
Yeah.
And then to be bought in to say, thanks, Eric Bledsoe, but you're an undersized point guard that is a liability on defense, and say, no, we're going to double down on defense. And they're going to mortgage a little bit of our future in doing so. So I take away, you asked one question, I answered 4 for you.
That's good. It's good.
I absolutely believe you cannot win in the NBA without defense. And that's what the Lakers did last year at the end of the season. They were, at the end of the year, they were clamping down.
Yeah.
1 and 2. It just gives you a different archetype, a different version of a way to win and to build culture. And I just really appreciate what Giannis has done. He is in the Tim Duncan mold where he's staying in an organization and building a culture. He is in the Kobe mold where he stayed in one place and helped build a culture, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah. A couple other things on Giannis real quick. One is I think his spirit is what impressed me the most. And you could see his spirit when he was ordering a 50-piece chicken the day after winning. He's overjoyed, the genuine joy that he's feeling as someone who came up from a difficult upbringing in Greece to where he is now. It is a little bit reminiscent of Jordan's ascent out of nowhere. I'm going to stop saying Jordan related to Giannis, and I'm going to start saying Hakeem Olajuwon as the corollary. If you think about him as an international player, you think about him even as a big man, and then also as one who transcended the prevailing thinking about the aspects of his game that he'd be able to develop. The speed with which Giannis plays off the dribble is really what is most freakish to me about him. The fact that he's bringing the ball up and looking for an opportunity in transition at how tall is he? Is he 7 feet?
6'11",
11 and long. And then on the alley-oop, I mentioned this to you. He reminded me a little bit of the Rain Man, Sean Kemp, playing with Gary the Glove Payton for the Sonics back in the day. The way in which he could dunk and could just be so much above the rest of the game. Giannis did that, and he did that on both sides of the court. A lot of his blocks were above where you would expect him to be, and then the speed with which he got there, particularly. Is there a name for the block of the alley-oop? Because
not yet.
That needs a name, because my God, the signature plays, and it wound up being a more beautiful series than I was expecting. I was expecting, if it was going to be a really beautiful series, it'd be more the Suns performing an amazing offense, which we really saw throughout the playoffs. But I think it was more the fluidity with which Milwaukee could play, particularly in transition after their defense made something happen. I forgot how much I love that style of basketball. And I was very hopeful that with the spirit that Giannis was leading with would continue to drive this team. I just think they're probably going to be on par with Olajuwon's Rockets in that they won at least one championship in an off year due to COVID, due to injuries, due to wada. And I think the conversations for Giannis, who's still young, soon to be 27, he's got plenty of career ahead of him. It is another counterpoint to the hope, as someone who's in the latter parts of my professional life, that someone like Chris Paul could win a championship. That would have been a narrative that I was happy to get behind. But I got to say, I was pleasantly surprised by how well the NBA season ended. And what are your thoughts looking ahead, coming out of this season perspective?
Just one more thing on Giannis.
Yeah.
I think the Hakeem, interesting that you talked about Hakeem. So now there's only 3 players that have won MVP and defensive MVP: Jordan, Hakeem, and Giannis. Mm-hmm. Saw an interesting stat. There are 3 players, Jordan, LeBron, and Giannis, looking at it before age 26. Jordan had 6 All-Stars and 1 MVP, no titles. LeBron, 7 All-Stars, 2 MVPs, no titles. Giannis, 5 All-Stars, 2 MVPs, and 1 NBA title. So he's on a path. When you look at next year, the Bucks were a moment and a toe away from getting knocked out of the playoffs by a transcendent star in Kevin Durant. And we always have to remember, and just even goes to looking at the Suns Bucks, at the end of the day, I was leaning on leadership, but oftentimes whoever has the best player on the court is probably going to win.
Yeah.
So the Bucks, they're going to reload, but with a healthy, maybe Harden loses a couple of LBs. He looked a little thicker this year.
Yeah.
Irving stays in for hopefully, 65 games.
Kyrie gets hooked up with the right Sage distributor to make sure that everything, all the feng shui in the Barclays Center is where it needs to be. Yeah.
World is square, whatever we're going to talk about there. Yeah. And then Kevin Durant, I think that's a tough group to get through.
Yeah.
But if you're going to lean on a super team versus one that's been together for a long time, Giannis is probably the only one that has that chance. So own this, for a guy who gets crushed for his free throw percentage. Yeah. And in the penultimate game, he goes 17 for 19 from the free throw line. If he's his normal series free throw percentage, they lose that game.
Yeah. He needed to shoot 10 for 19 to tie. And he shot 17 for 19.
You did that. How you did that so fast?
I did that already in my mind. Yeah.
You're prepped for that. So kudos to Giannis. I have purposely continued to say his first name, and I'll allow you to continue to try to say his last name. Kudos, really brave of you. But we have a new star that I hope, he's had a 4-year run that has been dominant, and he's the kind of guy that you root for. I want another 4 to 6 year run where he truly cements himself amongst the NBA greats. He belongs there, and he's the kind of guy you root for, unlike, a guy like Barkley that you keep talking about.
Well, and for me, it's also, what's he going to be like with a little bit of swagadocious energy behind him? He's now coming back. Like, I just won that game. He's running it back as someone who won a championship. Is he going to lean in with the level of this is my world now, this is my league now? And what I love about Giannis is he's still a pretty humble guy. He doesn't come across as arrogant by any stretch, which is really fantastic. My bold prediction about Giannis, and this does relate to upcoming programming from your friends here at Running It Back, is that I think he's the inside track for Space Jam 3. What do you think? I think that's a bold prediction. That's a couple of years out. Warner Brothers, come at me, Giannis, and your representation, but I'm going to put it out there. Space Jam 3. Giannis would be fantastic. We could talk more about that when we talk about.
That's if we need another Space Jam. I think we're okay.
Show. We're gonna talk about Space Jam. That's also coming for those of you who love Running It Back's media criticism as it intersects with lessons learned from sports. But yeah, any final thoughts, Tarlin? I mean, it was a fun NBA season. We got range though. We're about to talk about the Olympics. We will close off our NBA programming for a bit with some Space Jam conversation, but then before you know it, the NFL will be back. Olympics are on the horizon. Lots of good stuff cooking here at Running It Back. But closing thoughts?
Yeah, great to finish another NBA season. My family, they were surprised that it was the finals because they thought the finals just happened. So I think they'll be happy to have the NBA off TV. I'm looking forward. The NBA is not done for me. Next week is my favorite day of the year, NBA draft. Mm-hmm. Got to see what the at the guys are wearing and where they're going, and see
Yeah.
how many times Jay Billis talks about, arm length and wingspan and everything else. So great capper to the season for those fantasy, and it's fantasy football is coming. Just so everyone knows, I did get the number 2 pick. So come at me with who you think I should take with the number 2 pick in a half-point PPR league. Nice. Outside of that, thank you for the NBA season.
Yeah. And as a resident Mets fan, who's probably a bigger sports fan on the baseball side, perhaps, than my lackadaisical Dodgers fan on the other side of the equation here, there is something called baseball happening. I'm certainly finding some lessons from this scrappy Mets team that continues to perform well. Hopefully you're enjoying what you're hearing. If you have any thoughts, we love feedback. Got a great note from a listener, Rochelle, who's out there, who went deep on some of our women's tennis shows, which Naomi Osaka lit the torch at the beginning of the Tokyo Olympics. Plenty to talk about on that front. We'll be coming back soon. This is Running It Back.